In this short vignette, just an introduction to a couple of the later pragmatists. Elsewhere on the website, you can find more information about Charles Sanders Peirce, Josiah Royce, and William James. Dewey is considered, John Dewey, the great educator, is considered one of the later and probably the most important in terms of education philosophy. And he was the one, his major book in this area is called Logic, the Theory of Inquiry. It is a magnus opus. But as he says in the introduction, he also wrote a version for school teachers called How We Think. And it, to me, is a remarkable book that lays out experiential education. But he has this idea of reflective thought and objective inquiry. And I want to tell a little bit of the story about him and about his association with Jane Addams. But I want to start out with this gentleman, Alfred North Whitehead, a mathematician who became one of the later logicians that thought about pragmatism. He didn't use that word. And the reason why I like him so much is because he delivered a paper. Wallace Donham, who is the legendary dean of the Harvard Business School, invited Alfred North Whitehead over in 1931 to the business school. Whitehead was one of the most famous philosophers in the world, and he was at Harvard from 1924 on. And Donham asked him to think about business. And so he delivered a paper called On Foresight. And toward the end of it, he came to his summaries about the importance of philosophy and why it was so useful for business people to think about it. He then concluded why it was important for business people to be thinking about philosophy, because he said the behavior of the community is largely dominated by the business mind. And went on to say, a great society is one in which its men at that time, practitioners of business, think greatly of their function. That's why we think it is so important for business people to ignite their values and vision, to be thinking about what's driving their action, the reflective thought and the objective inquiry together. He also finished by talking about philosophy, which is an attempt to clarify those fundamental beliefs. And as we have said often, is that the idea of determining your beliefs, your values, your principles, your virtues that are driving your actions, that these beliefs finally determine the emphasis of attention, which William James talked about at great length, that lies at the base of character. That's why we think it's so important in pragmatic inquiry to get to that deeper level of what is actually driving your actions, your values, beliefs, principles, and virtues. Next, I want to turn to John Dewey and Jane Addams. John Dewey was at Chicago for many years and set up his famous lab school. He claimed that he learned as much from Jane Addams as she learned from him. Jane Addams was the first woman to receive the Nobel Peace Prize and developed and ran the famous Hull House. And her work was to really be talking about the evidence. Her evidence with Jane Lathrop was really the foundation of the School of Sociology at the University of Chicago. They looked at the problem, they went out to find evidence, they then explored, they then interpreted the evidence, they then came to some conclusions for decisions, and they acted. All examples of pragmatism. He had a couple of things to say about education, John Dewey did. The purpose of education is not to put theory into practice, but to make practice understandable, to actually look and see what it is we're doing. And that's why his book was called How We Think, Not How to Think. How do humans think when they're at their best? And then he said, learning is a continuous reconstruction of experience. It involves the constant reweaving of the social fabric. That's the work we're doing today. That's why we believe this way of reasoning that was so important. Dewey felt it was the essence of democracy, is for people to be able to inquire, reflective thought and objective inquiry. That is the essence to finally saying what's driving us and what is our action as we become who we are. Thank you.